At that time, a number of governing bodies asked if we could look at 15-16 in more detail and start to indicate what the figures for 15-16 would look like. And so this paper attempts to do that. Given the timing, this was done in April, it's quite difficult to anticipate all of the risks which might arise during term 14-15. And so this paper has some indicative figures in it, which will be refined through ongoing modelling over the year, so that final figures come back to the governing body in quarter 4, which will be when we will actually take a final decision regarding the financial strategy for 15-16. To remind the governing body, there are 3 elements to the financial strategy. It's part A, which is non-recurrent money, where we pool the money we have to set aside non-recurrently to support the implementation of Shaping a Healthier Future and our other strategic programmes. Part B, which was where we agreed to ensure that no CCG was in deficit to enable everyone to be operating on a level playing field. And Part C, where we created an investment fund to enable all CCGs to invest in out-of-hospital services, given that those out-of-hospital services are critical to the delivery of Shaping a Healthier Future, to enable the activity shifts to take place. Moving to page 4.
Chair, I wonder if I might ask speakers to stand up. I cannot hear, and they're having, by nature of the discussion, to speak rather fast. It could be standing up, it might help.
I'm not sure
there
how
doesn't seem to be a loop in this room.
Can I ask for increasing volume? I'm not sure whether we can do the standing up and report to a paper at the same time.
Well, can do their best to help hear.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was trying to speak loudly. I know I'm often quite soft-spoken. So on page 4, it just identifies that this paper sets out the indicative contributions to parts A and C of the strategy for 15-16. Page 5 sets out those part A contributions. The planning requirement for 14-15 was that we set aside 2.5% of our budget to spend non-recurrently. Our current planning assumption for 15-16 is 2%, as we have a number of additional pressures in 15-16 relating to the Better Care Fund. In 15-16, we expect Hounslow to contribute to this part of the strategy for the first time, and then the other 5 CCGs who contributed in 14-15 will continue to do so. I would flag that the total contributions identified for next year are 53 million against this year's budget of 57 million, so that may represent a risk. And as we go through working out what our likely expenditure next year is, that may indicate a need to set aside additional funding for this part of the strategy. On page 6, it sets out the indicative contributions for part C of the strategy. In 14-15, Hounslow and Ealing, as well as Harrow and Hillingdon, were net beneficiaries of this part of the strategy, but we currently do not anticipate that they will require additional funding in 15-16. So the current expectation is that Harrow and Hillingdon would still be net beneficiaries from this part of the strategy, and that the net contributors would be Brent, Hammersmith and Fulham and West London. In accordance with the principles of the strategy, the contributors are in relation to the financial strength of the individual CCGs, and so the contributions are based on that, with Brent and West London contributing the most, and Hammersmith and Fulham contributing £1 million in this indicative set of figures. So as I say, this is here for approval. It's the first draft of the numbers. It will be iterated through the year so that in-year risks and benefits are reflected and may change the figures at the end of the year. When this has been discussed in finance and performance committees and in the other governing bodies, there have been 2 areas where it has been approved subject to. The first being subject to the more detailed planning across all 8 CCGs on an open book basis, so that we get a clear understanding of positions for 15-16. And the second being subject to a review of part C of the strategy for 14-15 to ensure that the outcomes that part of the strategy is trying to achieve have actually been achieved before we put further into that element. But it's here for approval subject to those two areas.
Questions, comments?
I should say we did discuss this at Finance and Performance Committee. There's quite a lot of debate there, and it was supported by both.
So anything, so supported by Finance and Performance Committee, is there anything that particularly came out of that discussion?
Just what Claire said in terms of we wanted to make sure that things that we aim to do this year were completed before kind of implementing them again next year.
So, from the feedback I'm getting, it's been through Finance and Performance with the reservations that have already been voiced and the sense that we need to keep adjusting this financial strategy. Are we prepared to approve it?